I feel bad now that all the questions about the exam were asked before I turned on the mic, but maybe we should incentivize turning up a bit more anyway, it's no harm. So what I'm going to look at today now, I think by the end of today's class, you will have everything you need to do assignment 2, except the specification for assignment 2. But when I give it to you, you'll have everything you need to do it. There might be 1 or 2 party tricks I might show you later. But I think in terms of where we are in the module, I think after the day, I feel like I'm done. That's only week 6, but there's only so much you can say about JavaScript. I mean, the option would be to have said it slower, but there's only, there's not much more to JavaScript than this and what we're going to do today. There's a few tricks I'll show you and a few things, but you don't need any of them really for the assignment. So I will be coming in with 1 or 2 more things that you could use in the assignment, but I think for the most part the lectures from now on will be me going out of my way to find stuff to talk about in JavaScript, because there's not much to it really. I may even consider making one of the lectures a tutorial or something, or we'll see. Things are that bad, or we're doing that well in that we've the module kind of pretty much sorted, I think. Now, seeing it done and understanding how it works and going away and doing it, of course, is a very different thing. And as we know, JavaScript is not our friend when it comes to implementation. So it's no small feat to actually go away and do the assignment. But in terms of the knowledge and understanding and the tools and techniques, you'll have them all after today. Now, what we're going to look at today is putting everything in the cloud is, I think we regret that after the apocalypse. Okay, so let's go back here. No, so what we have here is a form, and we look at some of the form elements. We might have seen those already in HTML anyway before. And what's special about this form is that we're going to enter data, and then this JavaScript code is going to hoover up all of the information and send it off to a server, which is what would happen in reality. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the server I'm sending it to is gone, so that would be a problem. But that's typically what would happen. JavaScript can only do so much, and then it sends all the information off to the server, and that information comes in, and then it does whatever it does, and the server sends back another web page. So what this is going to do is it's going to check that we've entered everything we're supposed to enter before it sends it off. And as we saw before, that's one of the main jobs of JavaScript. Checking the user input to see if it's up to scratch is one of the main jobs JavaScript does. And then if everything's okay, it'll send it off to the server. So for this to work, we must have this field, and we must enter one of these. And that's probably enough then, I think, to have that go off, is it? Yeah, okay. Now, what would have happened then, if this was working, is that the server would have done its thing. Now the program, what I'll give you, I'll turn this back on and make sure it's working. I'll give you the URL. And what this will do is it'll give you back all of the information you sent it. So you can check to see if you're sending the right stuff. But let's just look at the behavior again there. If we don't have the things we're supposed to have, it doesn't send it off at all. It just gives out. So this form won't get sent where it's going until I put in everything I have to put in. And so that's what you want to happen. So if you put in a credit card that doesn't have the correct number of digits, well, there's no point in sending it to the server, like. We know it's no good. So we're not going anywhere until you give me something that looks like it's right. The same with the phone number, whatever the case may be. So that's one of the main jobs of JavaScript, and that's what your assignment is going to do. Now let's have a look at the code. Now, this didn't validate properly as XHTML 1.0 strict, so I must look into that. This is a very old example. So I may update this with a slightly improved version. But all of the important elements are here. So let's look first at the HTML just for the form. Now, a number of things here that are really old school. I mean, using a table for the layout. You know, in this day and age, you shouldn't be using tables for layout. You know, you should be lined up and shot. And I would probably be the one pulling the trigger. So it's, you know, I wouldn't be holding up this now as a good example of the way to do it. But we're not interested in the layout today. I mean, you'll be using more CSS for yours in the assignment. What we're interested now in today is the code and how it's going to work. Here we have radio buttons. So these are the radio buttons that we saw in the example here. Small, medium, and large. And you see here we have there's a TD there. So in reality, you'd be dealing with divs, okay? You probably wouldn't be using TDs. Joe, I might just go away and rewrite this, but not right now. So this here is how we code the radio buttons. You'll notice that for radio button, the HTML is coding the button, and then the text comes after it. You know, the text is actually quite separate, and there's no slash input, which is what you might have expected. You might have expected, you know, input, the text field that you're looking for, and then slash input. But that's not the structure of it. That's how you code it. So this gives us these 3 radio buttons here. Then we just have input fields here. Now this is the default size for those, but you can change all that in the CSS and get whatever you like. So this has got the name, this is ID name, this one here is ID title. So you can kind of see where we're going with this. We're giving all these form elements IDs. So how many guesses do you want as to what we're going to see when we see the JavaScript? We're going to be seeing get element by IDs there all over the place. Now, why are we giving them IDs and names? Well, when the form hoovers up all the fields and sends them off to the server, it's going to send them by name. So the name is required for the input. So for this input here to be any use, we need the name there. So when it arrives at the server is going to see customer title equals Mr. It's going to see customer name equals Colin. The IDs are useful for the DOM and interacting with the elements on the page. We're not going to use them for interacting with the data in the fields, if you know what I mean. So that's why it seems like overkill to have a name and an ID. You think you could do with one or the other. But one is really talking, one is dealing with the data, and one is dealing with the formatting, with the DOM. And so they're all there. This is another one then. This is just the drop-down thingy. Again, realistically speaking, you shouldn't be doing any of this in the HTML. That's all a job for the CSS. With the options then, you actually do have a / option. And it closes there. And also you can set one of these to be the default if you want, which would always be a good idea. Now you have to be careful, of course. I mean, you can overdo that. Ryanair is notorious. You know, if you're not careful with Ryanair, you'll have bought travel insurance, a new bag, and priority boarding, and that's about it, I think, at the moment. You know, so they set all those things to default, and you have to turn them off. So it can be useful, but I mean, you want to be nice to your users too. So that's how that looks. Any questions on that? You get the idea there. No. So here then is where it starts to get interesting. So in the form tag, we're specifying the name of the form, and then we're saying on submit return and this function here. If this comes back as true, the information in this form will get sent to this server here. If this comes back as false, it doesn't go. Now, there are different ways to send information to a server. Get is one of them. And we're only going to use get. And I'm not going to get into it. And then this code here, this is a URL then, and you can see this is a PHP program that's accepting the information. Now all that PHP program does is actually spit out back at you what you sent it. It's a very good way then to see that everything is getting where it's supposed to go. So we're seeing here also for the first time the interaction between HTML and CSS, and JavaScript doing stuff on the page. And then the final part of the puzzle then is on a server somewhere. And it sends the information to that server, and that goes and does then whatever it does. So if you're at Amazon, some of it's happening on the page, and then eventually some of it happens behind the scenes. So if you are in Web 2, for example, you'll continue with all of those pieces of those puzzles. You won't see any more HTML. I was going to say you're going to see a shed load more of CSS, but you're already seeing that, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah. And you are, well, no, see, even there's even more CSS than there's a whole other module of CSS just. What's it called? Advanced web development. And the web people will also see advanced interactive web development, which is like way more JavaScript. And then there'll also be the server-side web development, which will be what happens in the PHP. So the web people are going to fit all of these pieces of the puzzle together, and the comm people won't see the comm people probably won't see much of PHP, for example. But certain parts of certain jobs get done in certain places. No, so I was going to say I feel like there's more, but no, there is more. There is more. Yeah. So, okay. So that's what happens when you click the button. Now, this then does a number of things. The main job it has is to come back with true or false. True, everything looks great, send it off to the server. False, stall the ball there, we're not going anywhere. It's performing a secondary function of giving out in the meantime. And we're going to have a look at that now. So product selected here is going to be set to false by default. And then what we're going to do is if they click on one of these here, that'll be set to true then, and that'll be okay. So you have to actually proactively click on one of these. There is an argument to be made that, well, if you have one set by default, that'll do. If you do set one, if you are going to have set one by default, though, you'd want to do it explicitly. I wouldn't be surprised if, in the absence of any information, this browser decided to set this one to small by default, but another browser might have had none selected. Who knows? No. Let's have a look here. So what we're saying here is, if you haven't clicked any one of these, give out, which is fair enough. And then we're saying get this element here called radios, which is the TD that these radio buttons are in. No, I'd be expecting to see divs there now rather than TDs from you guys, okay? And we're just going to change the background to yellow and the border to red and 2 pixels. And we're going to say we're not happy with the overall result either. Do you think I wrote this actually? What's different here from the way I've been doing it?
Function is indented.
Curly braces. Boolean is ours in the true route when you're doing it.
In all of the examples I've given you so far, we set it to true by default, and then if we find something wrong, set it to false. You know?
Isn't that what it's doing?
Which is that what it's doing, yeah. I'm deliberately wasting your time, sorry. Oh, let me try and pass that off as a trick question. But here we're setting the false is just for these here. And when you click one of those, we'll set it to true. But that's checking just whether you've clicked on this. So if you've clicked on this, that part is happy. And if you haven't, the overall thing is still false. So we shouldn't expect to see anywhere result equals true apart from the beginning. Because just because one part of it is right, it's not going to make the whole thing right.
And you wouldn't want to return from this either, would you? Because you want
No.
to check everything.
You see, this is another good point. If you return no at this point, okay, grand, if this was wrong, it'll give out to you about this.
The next thing would be something different.
But if all the other things are wrong, you won't have heard anything about those. Whereas by waiting till the end, anything that needs attention can be highlighted now on the first go, and the user can fix those. So that's another reason not to return at this point. No, I always like to wait till the end anyway before I return. I like to have one way into the function and one way out. This is just saying if you haven't put anything in, so we're getting get element by ID name. If there's nothing in that, give out. It's not saying anything about what the content of that should be. It just wants there to be something there. And if it's not happy, blah, 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 setting it to different colors, and then setting that to false. So the absence of a name is a deal breaker, or not having clicked on one of these is a deal breaker. And then the final test then is, have you made a selection here? And if you look at the, I've gone down here, you see that the text, the text here is standard, express, and overnight, but that's not what gets sent to the server. Okay, it's the value that gets sent to the server, which in this case, maybe not, sorry. Where you gone? Which in this case is standard or express or overnight or empty. But there may be a scenario when it makes sense that they would be the same here, but you're not sending the same thing. You're not sending what's displayed here. You're sending this value. Can anybody think of an example where they would be different?
What do you mean?
When you'd have standard in here, but this would be very, very different from standard.
Using different languages.
Exactly. If this website was in more than one language, you would probably have, standard, express, and overnight in English, and then something and something and something in Spanish. But you want the same thing to get sent to the database no matter what. Like, you're not going to treat the package differently if it's overnight in Spanish or overnight in English. It's still overnight. So you'll want the database to get, you'll want the server to get the same information irrespective of the language. So that's where you might see it being different. And so to go back up to where the code was, it was saying, if this is empty, if this is set to empty, that's a deal breaker. And set that to false. So that's kind of it. I mean, that's kind of all I have to say about JavaScript. If you tortured me, I could maybe come up with some more. And I've no doubt I will. And I will torture you. But really, there isn't a whole lot more to JavaScript than this. This is what it does. There's the jobs it has. We saw a couple of jobs. One of them was to change how the page looks depending on certain circumstances. Another job was to validate input from the user before you send it off. That's what this is doing here. And another job was dealing with cookies. And that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot more you can do with JavaScript without taking a whole other module. Yes, sir?
I never thought of using JavaScript, but in JavaScript, use switch statements.
You do.
I never saw it used.
That's because they don't agree with me. No. If you look closely, they're in the slides.
Oh.
They're in the slides, but they're not in any of the examples I've used because I don't know, they wouldn't play nice with me once, and I was missing something, and I just went. Yeah. It's totally silly. It does switch statements, and there are times when a switch statement is exactly what you need, but for some reason, I never reach for the switch statement. But Java, it does switch statements, and you'll see the syntax in the slides. Any other questions?
The logging form.
The
Logging form. When you go to open the account,
all right, when you log in. Well, that's just taking the information and sending it off to a server. This is a good example, actually, of the division of labor. You could, for example, have a web page where you ask someone for a password to continue. Now, usually what happens is the person enters the password, that gets encrypted, sent off to the server. The server then may come back and say, yes, that person is good to go. JavaScript might then write a cookie so that for all the other pages, the presence or absence of the cookie might tell you whether that person is good to go or not. You could probably simulate that on a web page where you have a form and you ask someone for a password, and if the password is equal to whatever, it carries on. But of course, you could just actually open up the JavaScript and see what the password was. So that would be no good. You could probably fool quite a lot of people with that. But I mean, as a security measure, it wouldn't be any good. So when it comes to logging in, again, JavaScript is hoovering up the data and sending it off the server, and then the server decides what to do with it. Okay. We're not going to deal with the server. There are other things you can do with JavaScript. Have you heard of Ajax? So what Ajax does is, ooh, I'm so sorry I started that sentence. What Ajax does is, rather than going, like a lot of time you're going off to, let's say you're making a purchase, okay, this is what I want. You click and you go on to the next screen and it's asking you for some details, your shopping cart, and then you click and you go on to the next screen. And each time you send that off, the server is coming back with a new page. What Ajax allows you to do is, you have a static page that doesn't, you have a page and you're on the one page, and it goes away and just gets the piece of information that you want. So it might come back as a tiny XML file or just a value. So if you had a web page, for example, that was watching stock prices, you could have a button that says, you know, check price. You click on that, it goes away and gets the price and draws a new page with the price. But what would be more likely is that every minute you'd go and, I guess, make a new page automatically every minute. But what's better is if every minute you go away and just get that tiny, tiny snippet of information, just the price of that stock. And then you bring that back, and then you do get element by ID, inner HTML equals whatever, and you just update that. But we're not going to go near Ajax in this module. I might show you a bit just for the crack, but you going to ask me something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, my idea is, I was saying there, basically, I know they probably don't use it on Facebook, but say like the comments box.
Yeah.
Say they'll just be refreshing that certain part of it. I don't suppose they use Ajax to just bring in, say if there's a new comment added or something in. So instead of refreshing the whole page itself, they'll just, like say, add a comment onto it. They're just using that certain part to refreshing.
Yeah, I wonder if you're looking at your Facebook page and someone makes a new comment. I wonder, are you not going to see it until you actually refresh the page?
No, you see it now.
Yeah,
You see it now, do you?
Automatically updated.
Okay.
It's kind of what the thing they do on Twitter as well. If you like
Okay.
messages coming in, it tells you exactly actually how many are coming in, but it won't actually update until you click it or something.
Well, that may be using Ajax, for example. No, so I'll very briefly tell you what your assignment is going to be, and then I'll give you the. I deliberately wanted to hold off until after you've done assignment 1, just because I want people to focus on that. But assignment 2 is going to be a pizza ordering website, where you say, I want small, medium, or large. Here's my address. Here's my credit card. Here's my email address. Here's my phone number, as the case may be. I want toppings. I want this and this and this and this and this. And then you click the button and it'll check, well, is the credit card okay? Does that email address look okay? Does that look okay? Is everything in order? And then it sends off. Then it calculates the cost of the pizza. Well, there's a good one, there's a good one. And then sends it off to the server. But actually maybe not. But actually no, I might specify that I want you to display the price of the pizza. I want you to do that, yeah.
Send that to the server as well.
Would you actually send the price of the server to the, would you actually, I mean, okay, I'm confusing you now, right? So your assignment, you're going to calculate the price of the pizza. If you were implementing that, you probably wouldn't send the price of the pizza to the server. You would send what you want. You would send the order to the server, and then you'd want the server to calculate the price. Otherwise, I could order like 10 super mega giant pepperoni and pineapple and cheese, and then send to the server, and that costs €2. And the server would go, yay, Grant, take the €2 out of your credit card and send off the pizzas. So you probably wouldn't in reality send the price. And if you were sending the price, you see, there'd be someone out there who would be able to actually figure out how to, I mean, that would be a very easy hack. You know, if the server is going to believe the the JavaScript about what the price of the pizza is. So you could eat for free, you know, for the rest of your college career. Like. You'd wonder how long it would take them to figure it out, actually. Don't know. So things like that you have to watch when you have the interaction of the client and the server. But we're really not going to deal with that, you know. So I will show you some one or two tricks because I'm going to get you also to maybe visualize the pizza. So if you have a small, medium, or large, you can see bigger, smaller, things like that. You could see how you could use JavaScript to change the size of an image very easily.
Would that be like a dock? Would that be like a DOM if you click medium? Would like appear with a medium-sized pizza on the screen?
Yeah, yeah. You know, so we'll look at how to do that. So you have pretty much everything you need. I will show you one or two more tricks, but you'd be good to go to start on that. I would probably work on a better example and one that validates in XHTML 1.0. But like you're good to go now for assignment 2. Yes, sir.
Is it just the page for the ordering? Is there any additional pages?
No.
Just
It'll be one page. It'll be one page. You click send then when you're done. If everything is okay, it'll go off to the server, which is currently down, and we'll come back then with a list of everything you did. So you can see that it's working. So I will pin that down. I will, you know, I mean, the spec mostly written. I just want to double check. That's why I didn't give it to you. But also, I didn't want you to be distracted. I really want you to concentrate on just that assessment 1. And that's the next time I see you will be that, won't it?
That's the example.
Yeah. Well, of course, the next time we see you outside of a lab.
People have been using assessment and assignment kind of for the same things a couple of times, getting confused a couple of times.
The word assessment and assignment?
Yeah, like we have the database assignment, which is actually a test. You know, it's kind of more of an assessment. So
Yeah, we use the word assignment and assessment, I guess, interchangeably. Whereas assignment usually means go away and come back with this work done. They would both be assessed, like that would be an assignment, I guess, would be in a form of assessment. Whereas you're getting one exam as an assessment, and then the second one is an assignment as an assessment.
Do you want just code or bells and whistles webpage?
Do I want just code or bells and whistles webpage? Elaborate.
Just a working code in a basic HTML, or do you want all the CSS and the HTML?
When now? For this?
yeah.
No, this would be a fully working, good-looking website.
Can we use HTML5 if we want, or does it have to be active HTML?
You could use HTML5 if you want, but you would have to use it in a way that is good.
Well, it'd have to validate, obviously.
No, there's a problem with HTML5. Do you know the way? Do you know the way in HTML, XHTML 1.0 strict, for example, you have to have the slash at the end of your image tag, and everything that you open has to be closed. And XHTML is a subset of XML.
Yeah.
Well, the HTML5 people went to do their own thing. So HTML5 does some new things that are good, but the standard for HTML5 in terms of being strict with yourself is lower. So you cannot close off some of your tags now and be valid in HTML5. I wonder what the JavaScript people at that meeting. You know? So
As it happens, he's the CIO of Mozilla, so maybe he was.
So the HTML5 is actually, you could validate in HTML5, right, and still piss me off. I guess that's what I'm trying to
Well,
say.
learn the other way first.
So you learned the other way first, so it should be easy for you to write good HTML5. So you can do HTML5 on condition that it's
Nice.
nice HTML5. or you can just stick to XHTML. If you stick to XHTML 1.0, you will the validator will tell you off more quickly, which is a good thing. There are one or two features in HTML5 which, if you really wanted to push the boat out, you could use. One thing HTML5 does is you can say this field here is in fact an email address. And then if the person enters something that isn't an email address, well, HTML5 will have a tizzy fit on your behalf. So it makes it even easier to detect. Whereas in XHTML 1.0, you would have to write the code yourself to see, is this an email address? And also, HTML5 allows you to drag and drop. So for this assignment, the main reason to use HTML5 would be that if you wanted to show the person a plain pizza and have them drag their pepperoni and drag their chicken and drag their peppers onto the pizza, that would be lovely. But apart from that, I don't see much use for HTML5, but I won't rule it out.
What percentages are going for each assignment and assessment? What percentages are going for, like, say, the first assessment?
I believe it's 40, 60. 40 for 1 and 60 for 2. You can check that in the course. We can look it up. I'll look it up right now.
Oh yeah. CAT website.
40 and 60. Oh, and it's supposed to be in week 7. Wow. Right on schedule. When this module was, the original framers of this module had imagined you doing an assignment and then sort of a bigger one, building out another bigger one towards the end, but I just prefer to go with an exam and get it done and dusted. Yeah, and for the assignment, we'll probably have to have the talk about the plagiarism. You know, we probably have to have that talk, but I won't bore you too much with it. Interestingly, if you look at the learning outcomes, I think this is exactly what we've done. Use HTML and CSS to create web pages suited to scripting. Identify and manipulate scriptable components in the web pages. Create animated and interactive web pages, and then dynamically modify styles with the scripting language. But that's what JavaScript does. No mention of cookies now, in fairness. Okay. For your pizza site, for example, you could use cookies to remember the person's name, to remember what their last order was. Oh, hello, it's you again, Colin. Do you want large Hawaiian again? You could use cookies for that, for example, if you wanted to push the boat out. So within the spec, there'll be a minimum spec, for which you get kind of 50% say, and then there'll be all these bells and whistles you can add if you want. So I'll go through all that with you, but I just wanted to give you a preview there now today, since you were so good to come anyway. No. Any other questions? If you have questions or issues, you can catch me in the labs anyway before. Can you? Yeah. The exam is Thursday week. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
On the page there, we didn't see the bit of code that is checking for the digits, card digit.
No, it's not. It's not checking. And the example there I gave you, it's not checking for. Does it ask for credit card? Yeah, it doesn't actually validate the credit card at all. But obviously, yours is going to do that. You know. So you have all the pieces, but putting them all together is not a trivial thing at all. That will take quite some work. Any other questions? Great stuff, so guys.